Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're really unpacking the life and career of, well, a true force in rock and metal. A pioneering guitarist, really.
Absolutely. Her career spans decades, from breaking ground in that all-female band
The Runaways, yeah.
to huge solo success and navigating some pretty serious life challenges along the way. We're talking about Lita Ford.
We are, and it's a fascinating story.
Right. And our goal isn't just to list facts. We want to pull out the really compelling stuff, the surprising bits, those moments that make you go, huh.
Exactly, the aha
Yeah.
moments from this account, just to give you a real sense of her journey.
Think of it as like the essential Lita Ford story as told in this material.
So where do we start? It's actually maybe not where you'd expect. We think of her as this American rock icon, right? But her story starts elsewhere.
That's right. The account we're looking at says she was born in London, England, 1958.
Uh-huh. Her dad was British, her mom Italian, so kind of this cool international mix from the start.
But she didn't stay in London long. The entry mentions the family moved to the U.S. Long Beach, California when she was, second grade?
Yeah, second grade. So California is where the music really started for her.
And it started early. This source highlights she picked up the guitar at age 11.
Wow, 11.
Yeah. And influenced by Ritchie Blackmore. Deep Purple.
That tells you something, doesn't it? Aiming high from the get-go. Blackmore's not exactly easy listening for a beginner.
No kidding. It also mentions her vocal range, mezzo-soprano, obviously known for the guitar first, but her voice became, a big part of her solo thing later.
Right, but what's amazing is how fast she went from being influenced by rock stars to being in a band that became stars.
Seriously. At just 16, this is 1975, she gets recruited by Kim Fowley.
Ah, Kim Fowley, a character, like an impresario manager type.
Exactly. Big personality.
Yeah.
And he recruits her for the Runaways.
Which was just groundbreaking, an all-female hard rock band in the mid-70s. That was a big deal.
Huge. The source says they got a record deal fast, first album out in 76, lots of media buzz.
They were a real thing, touring, recording.
And the account really points out Lita's lead guitar work. It says it was integral. She wasn't just there, she was shaping their sound.
You can definitely hear that. But, well, like a lot of young bands, under pressure, things got complicated.
Mm-hmm. The entry talks about conflicts leading to the split in April 79.
What was the main issue, according to this?
Well, a big one was creative direction. You had Joan Jett wanting to go more punk, like Ramones influenced,
Okay.
while Lita and the drummer Sandy West wanted to stick with hard rock. So, a fundamental disagreement there.
That makes sense, musically. The source also brings up something from Lita's memoir, though.
Right. From 2016. She mentioned another reason she actually left briefly back in 76.
What was that?
She claimed she wasn't comfortable because some other bandmates were all into girls, her words, except for Jackie Fox. It's presented as part of that complex personal dynamic.
Adds another layer to why things eventually fell apart beyond just the music. It sounds like a really intense environment for teenagers.
Yeah, navigating fame and all that personal stuff. Tough.
So the Runaways end in 79, but she didn't really pause, did she? The account says she pivoted right into a solo career.
Pretty much immediately. Signed with Mercury Records in 1982, but it wasn't instant success this time. Not like the Runaways' initial splash.
Right. Her first solo album, Out for Blood from 83, the source calls it a commercial disappointment.
Ouch. That must have been rough after being in such a high-profile band.
Definitely a setback. But the story here shows she kept at it. Her second album, Dancing on the Edge, 1984, that did better.
Yeah, moderate success, helped her popularity climb, had some singles that did well, especially overseas. Fire in My Heart was top 10 internationally, apparently, and Gotta Let Go.
Okay, so things are building, and this is where the source details a really key move.
What's that?
She signs with RCA Records and brings in Sharon Osbourne management.
Oh, Sharon Osbourne. Okay, and that's presented as the catalyst for, like, a deliberate shift in sound.
Yeah.
More radio-friendly pop metal.
A calculated move.
And according to this account, it paid off. Big time.
Big time is right. The 1988 album, Lita, that's the one, described here as her most commercially successful.
Absolutely. That had the big hits. Kiss Me Deadly, obviously.
Iconic.
The entry also mentions Back to the Cave and Falling in and Out of Love, which Nikki Sixx from Mötley Crüe co-wrote, apparently.
Oh, cool detail. And then the monster hit, the duet with Ozzy.
Close my eyes forever.
Yeah. The source flags that as her biggest song ever, #8 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the U.S.
That really put her on the map for a much wider audience beyond just hard rock fans.
Yeah.
That collaboration was huge.
It really was. After that peak, though, the source suggests the follow-up albums didn't quite reach the same commercial level.
Yeah, Stiletto in 1990 didn't match Lita's sales, even though it had singles like Hungry and Lisa, which the entry notes was dedicated to her mother.
A nice personal touch there. And then Dangerous Curves in '91. That had her last charting single to date, according to this source, Shot of Poison.
Right. Her last album before taking a break was Black in 1995. Seems like the musical landscape was changing in the early 90s, you know? Grunge and alternative were taking over.
True. The momentum slowed for a lot of '80s hard rock acts.
But her career, as shown here,
Yeah.
was more than just albums and charts. The entry talks about other things she did.
Yeah, like her gear endorsements. She got really linked with BC Rich guitars, didn't she? Especially the Warlock, that distinctive shape.
Totally. And she dipped into TV and acting, too.
Oh, yeah.
The source says she was the regular guitarist for the house band on that Howie Mandel show in '92.
I vaguely remember that.
Had a small part in a movie, Highway to Hell, same year. Played herself on Herman's Head in '93.
Ha! Herman's Head. That's a throwback. So a bunch of different appearances.
It also notes she turned down being on The Surreal Life in 2007.
Interesting. Maybe sticking closer to music or acting roles she preferred.
Could be. And speaking of cool appearances, she was in that video game Brutal Legend in 2009. Yeah, lent her voice and likeness. Played a character called Lita Ford. Her song Betrayal was in it too.
That's a neat way to connect with a different audience. And her Runaways past keeps coming up too, based on this source.
For sure. She was heavily featured in that 2005 documentary Edge Play, a film about the Runaways. Spoke pretty candidly.
And the source mentions, well, some difficult stuff in that documentary. She apparently talked about experiencing abuse from management, Kim Fowley specifically.
Yeah, the entry states she alluded to verbal and sexual abuse from him. It adds a really dark, serious layer to the Runaways story from her perspective in this material.
Wow, that really sheds light on the kind of environment they might have been dealing with back then. So young, too.
Definitely complex and challenging. The source also notes she was played by Scout Taylor Compton in the 2010 movie The Runaways.
It must be weird seeing yourself portrayed like that. But interesting, she actually reunited with Cherie Currie later on.
Yeah, for a Christmas single in 2013. Tied to charity work. Toys for Tots, the source says. So even after all the conflict, some connection remained, it seems.
Good to hear. Beyond Runaways stuff, she stayed active, right?
Oh, yeah. Cover of Making Music magazine in 2013 narrated a documentary about Randy Castillo, the drummer.
And she was on Chopped, the cooking show.
Yep. Competed for charity. Made it to the second round, apparently.
From guitar solos to chopping onions, and then she released her autobiography in 2016, Living Like a Runaway. That title keeps echoing, doesn't it?
It really does. Seems central to her story. She also started a business, Lita Ford Guitars, with Jim Cara in 2018.
Still involved in the gear side of things.
And she's a regular commentator on AXS TV's Top 10 Revealed.
Yeah.
Sharing her insights. She's definitely still in the mix.
Clearly. Now, the account we're using doesn't shy away from her personal life either. And it sounds like there were some really public and difficult times.
Yeah, the source mentions she was briefly engaged to Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, mid-'80s.
Right. He even co-produced an album for her that never got released. The Bride Wore Black.
But the entry notes, she later spoke of bad blood between them. And her autobiography. Well, it included claims he physically abused her during that time.
That's a very serious claim cited in source material from her book. Adds a tough dimension to that period.
Paints a really complicated picture of that relationship, which was also creative. She was also briefly married to Chris Holmes from WASP early 90s.
And then the source gets into her marriage to Jim Gillette, the singer from Nitro.
Right. Met and married super quickly in 1994, like within 2 weeks.
Wow, whirlwind is right.
And they had 2 sons, James and Rocco. Moved down to Turks and Caicos for a while.
But that marriage eventually broke down. The source links it partly to, talks about a reality TV show, The Gillettes. An extreme American family.
Yeah, this is where the story, as presented in the source, gets pretty intense and sad. It details Lita's claims from interviews, saying that after she went away on business related to the show, she came back and found things had completely changed with her husband and sons.
How so?
Well, she alleged Gillette had turned the kids against her, claimed he suggested she would harm them, even encouraged them to physically attack her. Just awful-sounding stuff.
That's incredibly distressing. The source says this is what led her to file for divorce,
Mhm.
which finished in 2011.
Exactly. And following that really difficult experience, the source notes she became an advocate, started speaking out about parental alienation.
Trying to raise awareness based on what she says happened to her, that experience clearly had a huge impact.
Definitely. A really tough chapter detailed there.
So let's shift back to the music. After focusing on family and going through all that, she eventually returned to her career, right?
Yeah, the source points out that from the mid-90s until about 2008, raising her sons was the priority. So music took a back seat for over a decade.
That's a long time away from the spotlight.
It is. But she did come back. Started with some warm-up shows in 2008 using the name Kiss Me Deadly.
Calling back to the hit.
And then the album Wicked Wonderland came out in 2009
How is that described in the source?
as having kind of a new metal sound,
Mm.
which was maybe a surprise to some fans, and it was collaborative with her ex-husband, Jim Gillette.
Okay. So maybe not the return some expected.
Seems that way. The source mentions that by 2011, Lita herself was talking about wanting to do a real comeback album, sort of implying Wicked Wonderland wasn't quite it, partly because of the collaboration, maybe.
Gotcha. So she wanted to reset again.
Yeah, and she followed through with Living Like a Runaway in 2012, which the source says was much more in line with her classic hard rock style.
And that title again, Living Like a Runaway.
Right, the entry points out the double meaning. Her old band, obviously, but maybe also hinting at, like, making peace with that past. Coming full circle with Cherie Currie, maybe.
It does seem to tie things together. Has she released anything since then?
Yeah, something pretty cool in 2016 called Time Capsule.
Time Capsule, what's that about?
It's described as a collection of songs they found on old analog tapes from the 80s. Unreleased stuff.
Seriously, like lost tracks?
Yeah, featuring recordings with a whole bunch of famous musicians. Billy Sheehan, Gene Simmons, Brice Kulick, the guys from Cheap Trick, Dave Navarro.
Wow, that's like unearthing a treasure trove from her peak era. What a find.
They've been amazing to rediscover those. And speaking of recognition, the source mentioned she got the Certified Legend Award from Guitar Player magazine in 2014.
Nice. That's a serious honor in the guitar world.
Totally deserved. And the entry lists her current band members, too, so she's still out there, still active, playing live.
So looking back at the whole story presented in this source, it's quite a ride, isn't it? Teenage prodigy, groundbreaking band, huge solo success, then stepping back, facing these really deep personal battles she's described.
And then making this determined return to music. It's a narrative of, yes, huge talent, but also just incredible resilience, adapting, surviving.
Absolutely. Based on this account, what really strikes you about her ability to just keep going, to adapt?
I think for me, it's how the narrative shows her always circling back to being a musician. Even after long breaks, even after everything else detailed in the source, she finds her way back to the guitar, back to performing, the comeback albums, finding those old tapes, staying involved with commentary. It all points to this core drive, you know?
Yeah, that persistence really comes through and makes you think about that title again, Living Like a Runaway. Considering everything in this account, the band, solo highs and lows, the personal stuff, the returns, what does that phrase really mean for her whole life's journey, based just on what we've covered here? Something to chew on.